Welcome to Ivy Lane Home. Today's furniture project is this American of Martinsville dresser. Now, it's in pretty good shape overall, but you can see it has pretty chunky hardware, and I don't really like the molding in the middle. I think it's too big and chunky. So we're going to try to mix it up a little bit. So I was inspired by one of my friends over on Instagram, the Curated Addict. She's actually also over here on YouTube, and she does a lot of this style, and she just modernizes them. So here's my inspiration picture of something that I'm going to kind of go for, and I'm going to try to go for a matte black. So, this one already, I did a process reel, and it's already gotten a lot of people upset on Facebook and on YouTube here because I'm going to take off that molding, but these are a dime a dozen on my local Facebook marketplace. I got this long dresser, a matching armoire, a mirror, a headboard, and a small end table for $200. Nobody wants it. It just sat on marketplace for weeks. And so we're going to take our hand at trying to modernize it to see if we can make it something that somebody would want in their home today. So let's dive in. First thing I like to do is test the finish with my Carbide scraper, see if I can get it off. Although I'm going to paint this, I'll warn you, I am going to strip the top because it had some failing finish on it, and you really don't want to put paint over a failing finish. So it was kind of tough to take off, so I decided I'm going to break out the stripper. I'm using Smart Strip. This is by Dumont. This is their citrus stripper. You just simply wipe it on, let it set for about an hour or so, and then you can come back and scrape it off. I'm using my Carbide scraper. It came off really easy, so you can tell it was definitely a failing finish. I'll scrape off as much as I can, and then I'll come back with some acetone and some 2/0 steel wool, and I'll get off the remainder of the stripping residue. I'm going to remove this chunky hardware. I will keep it, or I'll put it up for sale, see if somebody else wants it, or just donate it to my local restore. But I'm going to go with a little bit more simplified look. I'm just going to go with a knob. So here I go. I'm going to dive in, and I'm going to take off this molding. So this is just held on with pin nails and some wood glue. So I'm using a 5-in-1 tool and my hammer, and I'm just kind of prying it up. Now the middle part was definitely a lot more difficult to get up. I had to loosen it around with the putty knife, and then I was able to go in with some hammers and really get it up. Now, as I pull this up, you can see this is just veneer over particle board. So it's a quality dresser, but it's not an all wood dresser. So I'm not ruining a fine antique, and it's okay. So it's going to be beautiful. I'm going to smooth out this whole area because I'm going to replace the moldings with some fluted trim. So I'm going to smooth it out, and then I'll put some DAP wood filler on it just so I have a really nice smooth surface. And I need to fill in those hardware holes on the back, as I don't plan on refinishing the back of it. So I'm using some wood epoxy. This is by Mohawk in the color walnut. So you just cut off a section you knead it up. I'm gonna make it into like little spaghettis, and I'm just gonna slide it in there and try to fill up that hole. Then I'll trim it and kind of clean it up around the hole. I want it to blend into the surrounding wood as best as possible. Now I'm going to prep the drawers. Now I'm going to fill in these holes in just a minute. But before I do that, I'm going to scuff sand the whole drawer. Now, I know people are upset because I might be painting this, but what I do like to do with painted pieces is I will seal it with clear shellac as my first coat of primer. And that way, if somebody wants to refinish this down the road, no problem, because there won't be any kind of paint stuck in the wood grain because I'm sealing it with the clear shellac first. So that's a really great way to do it. If you do want to paint a piece but you want to preserve the original finish, just clear coat it first and then it's not a problem. So I'm going to fill those hardware holes in with some dowels. I have a little miter shear. I'm just going to cut off a little bit of the dowel. Now my dowel was not quite big enough for the hole, so I'm going to add just a little bit of wood fill to it just to kind of take up the extra room in that cavity. Now I do have some painter's tape on the underside, so it's not going to fall through. So I'll just kind of put in some wood fill down into the hole, and then I'll place the dowel in there. And then once it all dries, then I'll trim it off. I'm using my Dremel multi-tool. This is a great little thing. Zip, zip, and they're gone. Then I can sand it smooth. If I do need to come back and do just a little bit more fill, I can with like some glazing Bondo or something. I usually do that after I've put my first coat of primer on. Now I'm going to use the same DAP that I use. I like this DAP because it has a couple different ways. You can use it just as a straight wood fill, or you can dilute it with some water, and I'm going to use it as a grain fill. So this is a very open grain wood, and so if I were just to paint it the way it is, you're going to see all of that texture in the wood, which is not really what I'm going for. I'm really going for a very smooth look. So if you want a really smooth paint finish, you want to skewer the grain, so you got to fill it in. So that's what I'm doing with this watered down wood fill, is I'm doing a whole grain fill on the whole piece. I'm going to apply it with a Bondo spreader. I'll let it dry, and then I'll come back and sand it smooth. You can throw it away.
They actually snapped anyway, so I don't think. And then did the top coat go in the...
I do want one wood element on here. And so the base is solid wood. So I'm going to strip it down and I'm going to preserve it to wood. So it's going to be a beautiful wood base with a painted body. So I'm using the same stripper and I'm going through with a wire brush. Once I let it set, it came off really easily. Just simply pulled it back off. And then again, I'm using some acetone and some 2/0 steel wool. And then once that dries, I can go through and sand it and prep it for stain.
I don't know if you probably remember the jacket only wear, the brown one. I had it, but it honestly would only work in like 40, 50-degree weather on its own. This is not,
And then put the... Oh, well, they look it. I love to use Osmo, and they have a wood wax finish in colors. This stain and sealer in one. So this is the color Cognac, and it is beautiful. You apply it the same way. Once you've sanded everything down and it's ready, then you're going to just simply wipe it on and you wipe it off. And so I'll just do one coat of the colored, and then I will do another coat of just clear. Doing the same process on the top, you can see that's just a lot of open wood grain. I've sanded through the grits, 80, 120, 180. Then I'm going to seal it with shellac, and I'll do the same grain fill that I did on the sides and on the drawers. Now when I'm painting a piece, my trick so that you don't have drawers that stick is sand them down to raw before you paint them. So you're adding a lot of mill every time you put a coat of primer and a coat of paint on it. And so I try to sand them down to raw. That way I don't have any sticky drawers later. I'm going to tape off the base exactly where I want my paint line to start. So I'm just going to start with some painter's tape. Then I like to use my 3M hand masker that has some craft paper attached to it, and I will mask that area off so that I don't get any paint on it during the painting process. I have a lot of curves on this piece, so the last thing I'm going to do is use some liquid sandpaper before I paint, just to make sure that I have all of that surface etched up and I'm ready for paint. I'm using Bin 123 primer. This is tinted gray because I am going darker. This is my Earl-X 5700. It's a 2-turbine gun, and it's made by Wagner. I love it. It is wonderful. It's an all-metal gun. You can see you can turn. I have different patterns. So you can have horizontal, vertical, and then there's an offset pattern. Where I have a lot of detailing, that's where I like to use the offset setting, because it really just, I don't know how it does it, but it just pushes it into those details really well. And then I can come back and do the horizontal or vertical. After the first coat of primer, I always make sure I sand between my coats. So I'll do a nice little scuff sand, catch any areas that I might have missed the first time round. Then I'll do a second coat of primer. This is glazing Bondo, and I like it when I have like any kind of shallow dents or anything that needs to be filled in. You can see on the top I had some areas where you could still see a lot of that wood grain, and you could see that perimeter where I had a little bit extra detailing of inlaid wood. So I'm just going to cover that up with a little bit more of the DAP wood filler. Because I had my drawers in, I'll just pull them out to do my coats of paint and primer. Now I'm going to drill my new hardware holes. So the first thing I did is I got my middle point between the top and the bottom, and then I'm going to take my measurement across the drawer and try to find my middle. So I found my middle, then I checked my measurement, and I'm using this little hardware jig just to make the hole. So once I have that, then I put a laser line, and then I can just go right down to the other drawers, and I know that it's perfectly lined up. Now we're ready to head to Lowe's to find our fluted trim. We found a piece that I think will work. Now Kate helped me and she took it out and we put it across this area just to check for level. We want to make sure it wasn't bowing. So we had a couple that you can see they're just kind of bowed up. I'm using them on the middle drawer, so I'm just going to place it in the drawer and mark a cut. Now I have two different miter shears. The cobalt ones that I got at Lowe's actually work better, the blue ones. And so you can see it doesn't take that much force just to cut them. So I'm going to cut them to size and I'm going to work my way down. To adhere them, I'm going to use a CA glue with an activator. So you're just simply going to put the glue on and then I'm going to spray an activator on the door itself. And then when I put the piece of trim down, it will literally adhere in seconds. So I'm just going to place it down, press it down, just kind of press it for a couple seconds, and you're good. So really easy way to do it. Don't have to like press it down or anything like that overnight. It's within moments that it's dry. So I can just keep working my way down, and I got really fortunate on this one because I didn't end up having to trim any pieces. It was a perfect fit. Now I'm going to use just a little bit of caulk around the whole area just to fill it in, make it look a little bit cleaner, because of course it's not going to be exactly the same. It'll clean it up, make it a little bit neater looking. Now I can get this door primed and painted up. I'm using the offset setting in here, and again, it helps get into those little detailed areas because there's just a lot of grooves there, so it really helps when I'm trying to get into some details. Now I'm ready to paint. I'm using Command Paint, and this is by Benjamin Moore. I find that when I use Command Paint, I do have to add a little bit of Floetrol to it, or I'll get some texture. So this paint is fabulous. It dries within 45 minutes. You're ready to recoat within an hour. So depending on your humidity level, sometimes I have to wait a little bit longer, but it's a really fabulous paint, and it dries rock solid. I'll do a scuff sand in between coats, just making sure I didn't miss anything. Sometimes little dust nibs or something land in my paint, so I have to get those out before I go on and do my second coat. Now I wanted a really beautiful matte color, so I picked up some Bare matte top coat, and I'm going to apply that over my second coat of paint. So I've let it dry overnight, and I'm coming back with a matte top coat just to kind of knock back that sheen just a little bit. Because again, I'm going for more of a matte, not quite flat, but I'm going for more of a matte look. Now I'm ready to clean up my drawers. I always like to clean the interior with a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water. That always just kind of gets off any extra contaminants that I didn't see. And then I'll refresh the drawers with a wood balm. I'm using an Artisan wood balm. This is a new to me product. It's from Arlington Woodworks. I'll have a link in the description if you want to try it. It's a veteran-owned company. They make it in small batches, and it's fabulous. It doesn't leave a real greasy residue, and it smells really lovely. So for my liners, I usually just pull the paper across the drawers and make a little notch and then trim it. I roll it up and put it along the front, and then I trim off the excess just to make it easier for me to not to have to handle so much extra paper. Then I smooth it out. Lately, I've been turning it on its end just to trim the interior. I kind of tilt it towards the light source, and I find it's a lot easier trimming when I kind of turn it on its side. So it might be something you try, but I like lining drawers because it's just, my buyers always appreciate it. It's just kind of a nice little extra treat when you open the door and you have a nice, fresh, clean drawer. And this is not your old contact paper. This is peel and stick wallpaper. It comes out pretty easy if people want to change it, but my buyers always love it. The last step is going to be changing out the hardware. Of course, the screws that it came with were just a little bit too big. So I'm using my wire cutters. You see it has a place where it says insert screw here. So I'm just going to place it in there, clamp it down, and it'll take off just a little bit and make it to where it works perfect. All right, well, let's look back at the before of this piece. Yes, it was a lovely piece, but I just wanted to reimagine it and see what I could do with it. So all that chunky hardware, and I wasn't a big fan of that big molding in the middle. So after removing the hardware, adding some fluted trim, changing out the hardware, giving it a beautiful matte finish, here is the finished product. What do you think? Yeah, that's pretty good, isn't it? I love it. I think it's beautiful. I love the matte color. I think it is very modern. You know, I know some of you will be like, oh, but it was beautiful before, and it was. But I think this just fits a modern home better. And I do like that I retained that base because it's in it. I really like the updated color. That Cognac by Osmo is beautiful. And I think it kind of helps ground it a little bit. I debated about keeping the top wood, but I don't know. I kind of like it all just painted out the same color. It's very seamless. And because I use Command paint, I'm not concerned about it having a painted top. It's really strong. And then, of course, I put a polyurethane on top of it. So, I mean, you have to be careful with painted tops, but if you treat them with care, they'll last a really long time. So enjoy some of these videos, and I'll come back in just a little bit. Okay, so what's the verdict? Do you like it? Are you sad that I took out the molding and painted the whole thing out? I don't know. I'm really loving it. I think it's a very modern piece, and I think it could go in a bedroom. It could go in a living room. I think it's gorgeous. Tell me in the comments what you think, and thanks so much for watching.